question is from Kay Kecker. Would it be better for an endurance athlete to focus on heavy weights, low reps, and even plyos, or light weights and higher reps?
Okay, so for performance purposes, there's a lot that can be said about all of the things that have been listed here in terms of helping the endurance athlete. You probably want to live, and what I mean by live is you probably want to spend most of the time of your resistance training focusing on the type of resistance training that's going to be most applicable to your sport. In this case, lighter weight and higher reps. Now, this doesn't mean high reps. I'm not saying do 50, 60 repetitions, because I've seen people do this and they'll end up doing 50, 60, 100 reps. Resistance training does one thing very, very well. It builds muscle and it builds strength. And you are still building muscle and building strength even if you're working at the 15 to 20 rep range. It's still a muscle building, strength building rep range. Now, it's not as extreme as the 1 to 5 reps or 6 to 8 reps, but it is still a muscle building rep range. In fact, there's some bodybuilders that train almost exclusively in that rep range. That rep range has more carryover to the endurance athlete. Yeah. Now, you're not doing the weights to build lots of endurance, though. There's a difference there. The endurance gains that you're going to get, most of which...
It's all you're running.
Yeah, it's going to be your sport. That's where you're going to get a lot of your endurance. Use weights for what they're good for, which is strength, stability, and maybe building a little bit of muscle. In this case, you're not trying to build a ton of muscle.
No, you're like more fortifying your joints.
Yeah.
You're building a support system for your bone structure. You want to be able to weather a lot of this like constant repetitive stress that you're putting your body through with this. And this is also too where a lot of times I know endurance athletes could benefit a lot from, doing intermittent sprinting as well. And so this is something that could stretch the capacity out a little bit further in terms of having, more gas tank and something, where they could turn it on a little bit more within the race. And so it's also like accessing more fast twitch. So yeah, there's definite adaptations that will also carry over into just the endurance part of it, but you have to build the overall body to, withstand this repetitive stress.
Do you guys see any value in plyos here?
For an endurance athlete?
I don't.
Little.
I mean,
yeah, very little.
Because when I hear someone that's an endurance athlete talking about plyos, I envision the person, doing the circuit training and the ice skaters in between.
Yeah, they're not doing real plyos.
Right. They're using the plyos to be fatigue based, which the real purpose of plyos should be set yourself, explode, rest, take your time, explode again, rest, take your time. And you're only doing that 2 to 4 reps type of deal. You're not doing that for 15, 20 reps inside of a circuit. This is where I think plyos are done terrible, and I don't see where there's a lot of value for an endurance athlete to be doing plyometric work. Not that there's not any benefits at all. It's just when you look at all the different ways that you can be training, I wouldn't be training my.
It's a bit of a mismatch for that body type,
right? It's not going to carry over into an endurance athlete as much as it would an athlete that needs explosive short. That's what I mean. If you would train an athlete that is doing something more short term and explosive, football player, basketball player, anybody who has these breaks in between. An endurance athlete, plyometrics are not as valuable as they are for another athlete.
No, and it's funny. Years ago when I was training in jiu-jitsu, it's been a long time now. It's probably at least 10 years. And this is something you want to consider also. I had guys that I trained with that were very, very high level, good friends of mine, and they were training 5-6 days a week jiu-jitsu. Some days they were training twice a day, so we were doing tons and tons of jiu-jitsu training. And jiu-jitsu there's definitely a strength component. There's some explosive component, but a lot of it is stamina. A lot of it's endurance. A lot of it is static endurance on the ground. It's a different kind of stamina than running, but it's more of a endurance sport, traditional jiu-jitsu, than say, like collegiate wrestling, which tends to be a little bit more explosive. And they would ask me how they should lift weights. And it's funny because when you're doing so much training, adding more, high rep type training can sometimes be too much for the body. So some of these guys would benefit from doing very short, once a week, 30 to 45 minutes of heavy weights, 4 rep type sets. because it wasn't so damaging and on the body and so exhausting on the body, they could recover from it, and they had a lot of carryover. Then they go train, and they'd feel the carryover from the strength. Versus when they would go to the gym and do lots and lots of reps, you guys know what I'm talking about. That can kind of burn you out, especially if you're already kind of pushing the limit a little bit. So there's a lot to consider here with, what kind of endurance athlete you are. If you're
and how much you're actually training that way. Because if you're running,
That's a good point.
If you're running 5 days a week,
and then you're going to go to the gym and do 20 rep squats and 20 rep lunges and 20 rep pull-ups, and you're going to mess yourself up. You might be better off going in doing mobility correctional work, picking like 2 exercises, and doing heavy traditional strength training, like lower reps, 5 reps, 6 reps, not going to failure,
only
enough to
only 1, maybe 2 days a week.
That's it. That's it. And that's what a lot of these guys did.
Yeah, very low volume.
Yeah, they were originally doing 3 days a week of resistance training. They were doing circuits. They were doing a lot of high rep stuff. And I looked at it and I said, this is probably too much. Let's have you back down to once a week. I had them each do 3 to 4 exercises. So it was like a squat, a bench, an overhead press, and a barbell row or something like that. And I'd say, okay, do 5 sets of 5 reps. That's it. 5 sets of 5 reps of each exercise. Pick a weight you can do, 7 or 8 reps with and only do 5. Focus on the strength, that kind of. And they all got phenomenal carryover results. And part of it is it didn't tax them so much to where it was just the workouts they were doing before was just too much. There's a lot to consider. But if you're an endurance athlete and you're doing like 4 days a week of running, 3 days a week of running, and you want to add some resistance training, traditionally the best carryover will be the higher rep stuff, 15 rep, that kind of stuff. But consider your recovery. Consider how much training you're doing overall, because sometimes throwing a lot of resistance training on top of it just going to make things worse.